Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness Cafe.
This is a feminist podcast where we talk about women's issues, politics, and health and wellness.
And where those issues intersect. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Madness Cafe. Today, Jennifer and I are joined by the lovely and radiant Ava Davis. Ava is, well, first off, Ava's amazing. But let me just give you a little bit of information as to why Ava is amazing. Ava, who is a Sundance Fellow, is also known as the Duchess of Grant Park. She is a trans actress, producer, filmmaker, and writer living in Atlanta, Georgia. She is also an advocate for increasing trans and queer representation, especially that of Black and other minorities. She is also madly addicted to jelly beans and gummy bears and fully participates in Jellybean season. And this is really awesome. Ava is working on producing her first feature film called The Waltz. She started a Kickstarter for that. We'll let her go into all the details about that whenever she's ready to talk about it. It's awesome because it's been fully funded as far as the amount that she requested for the Kickstarter. So that puts them closer to getting an entertainment lawyer, forming the LLC, getting dance lessons, and covering the website costs for a year. So awesome. That is fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank
Ava
you.
Davis, welcome to Madness Cafe.
It is really exciting to be here. I am so very excited. Thank you all for having me on and that very wonderful introduction. Very warm, very gracious. Yes, you're welcome.
Well, you deserve it.
Thank you.
So I'm really torn which way to go on the first question. I wanted to ask you about your history, but now I'm also really intrigued by the jelly beans. So which way do you want to go?
Oh, I feel like jelly beans are always a really great way to start. That's unfortunately how I've started every morning in jelly bean season.
And we're in jelly bean season right now, right?
We are. So jelly bean season, it sounds so ridiculous talking about it so officially, but jelly bean season runs from approximately right around Valentine's Day up until Easter. So sometimes it can run long or short, but you can go into your Publix, Kroger, whatever grocery store or convenience store have you, and they will have a wide assortment of amazing jelly beans that are only offered for this time of year round. So like you got your sweet tart jelly beans, you have, what is that? Trolley crawler jelly beans. What else do I have in there? Nerd jelly beans. Jolly Rancher and Starburst are year round, and like supposedly the main jelly beans, what are those? Jelly Bellies? But I'm mad at Jelly Belly because they offer really weird flavors like popcorn and other things, and no one needs to abuse the jelly bean power. Like that's just a complete abuse of the jelly bean power. So yeah, stick to your sours with Jelly Bellies. But yeah.
Do you remember when Jelly Belly came out with the flavors from Harry Potter and they were like snot flavored and
oh god.
Yeah, like my kids had
those. Or whatever.
Yeah, talk about nasty flavors.
I sure do. Again, an abuse of the jelly bean power. And I'm still so mad at them. Like, why? No one needs fear when biting into a jelly bean. Like, it should be a delicious, wonderful experience. And here they are, like, gonna trick you. No.
What do you like so much about jelly beans?
I'm addicted to sugar.
Me too.
Also, I have a very strange way of eating jelly beans where I like to put them in my mouth, like one at a time, and then I like to chew like a rabbit, the coating off of them. Do you get to the jelly underneath? And then pack them away in my gums like a gerbil or something until I get a bunch of them and chew them. So it's like it gives me something to do because I'm a highly anxious whatever person, and it's like I need to be doing something constantly. So yeah, but also they're just delicious and they make me really happy.
Well,
that's
good.
awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
Thank you.
I'm actually curious, okay, because we're going to step away from the Jelly Bellies for a minute. I'm really intrigued by coming out on NPR as trans to your parents. What? You were on NPR? What?
Right, I know, absolutely insane. So 2019, I decided to make the Duchess. This is going to be a long story, so just buckle in. Decided to make the Duchess that January, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. And as I'm preparing to make the Duchess, my friend Dominic calls me up out of New York, and he's like, hey, I'm putting on the Pride 50 1 Minute Play Fest over at Queen's Theater where he works. And he's like, I want you to come up and perform with us. And I was like, oh, that sounds really awesome. He's like, yeah, and I'll get you involved with your clump and everything, like clump being the group that I'm going to perform with.
Okay.
And so I'm like, okay, this is awesome. He sends me over the scripts and the director. In the section of 1 minute plays that I'm performing, I get to portray Marsha P. Johnson. The Duchess ties into this somehow because at that point in my life, I had decided like, all right, I think I'm going to transition now. I've been experimenting with gender for the past 2 years. I've been talking it over with my therapist for the past 7 years. We're both really tired. It's time to just go ahead and bite the bullet and maybe transition. I don't know, but the Duchess was kind of my first foray into like, is this possible? So with the 1 Minute Play Fest up at Pride 50, I was portraying Marsha P. Johnson, and I got put into an all women's group. And I was like, oh, wow, this is really fitting. Like, this is really affirming. And not only that, but it was this incredibly talented group of just queer performers across the gender spectrum, across the racial color spectrum, and just also across whatever other spectrum you can think of, all in this space getting ready to perform. And here I am, and I've got like 3 1 minute plays where I'm portraying Marsha P. Johnson. Like, this is amazing. And so when Dominic had picked me up from the airport to go do this, he was like, all right, so I need you to maybe add another day to your trip because you may be going at NPR. I was like, all right, whatever. Like, that's not really going to happen, but okay. And so we do the 1 Minute Play Fest. And then afterwards, Dominic is like, all right, so the NPR thing is on. So did you extend your trip? And I'm like, well, yes, I did, because I frankly needed a vacation. I was in the midst of producing The Duchess, and it was like, why not extend it for a day? And then I get the call from the pre-interview from NPR, and they're asking me these questions, and like, this is what we're going to talk about, like Marsha P. Johnson, you performing as her. I was like, this is amazing. And like, yeah, and you're coming out as a trans woman and your experience like that. I was like, okay, cool. I just came out to Dominic for the first time, to anyone like while we're here, but okay, let's roll with that. I'm now an out and proud trans woman. And in that moment, after we hung up, I was so excited that I called my mom, and I was like, Mom, guess what? I'm gonna be at NPR. And she's like, oh, I'm so excited for you. This is amazing. Oh, like, yay, I'm so proud of you, baby. You have to let me know when it comes on, and I'm gonna listen. And so then I hang up, and I was like, what did I just do? My parents and I have not had this talk about me transitioning or anything. And clearly they saw the changes leading up to that. Like, I was growing out my hair and I was transitioning clothing wise, but we never really had a discussion or anything. So there I am, like, okay, I have 2 options. Like, I can send her the link to listen, or I cannot say anything, but then she's going to hound me. So I go on to NPR and I do the interview, and I talk about, portraying Marsha P. Johnson as a Black trans woman and how that felt. And I was like, it felt really empowering because like, she's an icon, a saint of mine. And everything that she did with Star and being just visible for the movement and continuing to do the work in the community, and talking about that in the interview. And then we get done and I'm like, I could send it to her or I cannot, and we can never talk about this again. But Sarah Bareilles' Brave kept playing in my head, like, I want to see you be brave. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to post it on Facebook, and then I'm going to send it to my mom. And okay. And she calls me later that evening and she's like, I listened to your interview and you did a very wonderful job.
Oh, yay.
Oh my goodness.
And that was that. And I don't really know what the takeaway from it was, because I do remember that was the name of the show, The Takeaway, but we've still never really fully addressed me transitioning. Like, it's just something like I'd rather show versus tell. And for me, that goes back to my coming out experience. Like, back in high school, it was so traumatic for me and everyone involved. And I'm not the type to be like, hey, everyone, guess what? I'm gay or I'm trans. It's more like, what do you see? What do you interpret that as? All right, that's your truth. It doesn't match with mine. Okay, let's go with that. Like, I'm of the opinion that I'm not going to justify myself to anyone. So either how you define me is how you define me, but I'm secure in how I define me. So I'm good with that.
How do you define you?
I define myself as a Black trans woman who's queer and somehow ended up in a heterosexual relationship since transitioning.
Wow.
Right. My therapist and I had many meetings about that as I was transitioning. And he's like, so now that you're a woman, and this is pre-hormones or anything, he's like,
Mhm.
so now that you're a woman, you've gone from homosexual to heterosexual. I was like, stop right there. That was so rude of you to do that. Why on earth? And then we had to spend the next 4 sessions talking about how I was now heterosexual and how that did not sit well with me in my spirit.
Mhm.
But long story short, that's how I define myself.
So it sounds like your family has been very supportive of you, or at least allowed you the space to be you according to how you define you.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to my dad just a couple of days ago, and he remembers when it was time for me to go to college. It's a kind of a long story, but I'll make it shorter. So I got into UGA, but then there wasn't enough housing. And so they're like, all right, well, we won't have enough housing, so you have to find your own housing off campus. That did not sit well with my mom. My mom was like, I can't send you off to college and you not being on campus, being safe and all that. So we're going to find a solution. Let's go to our alma mater, Mercer, and see what's available there. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll go. And so we tour the campus, and then afterwards we're sitting down and like, and we have this package for you, this financial aid package, and you can do this and you can do that. And I was getting ready to literally sign on the dotted line when my friend Eric calls me and he was like, hey, I found us housing. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna hang up and I gotta go take care of some stuff. And I tell my parents, and in the midst of signing, like, so I'm not going here. I have housing at UGA and that's gonna be that. And I don't care what I have to do, but I'm not going here. Like, I'll strike out on my own. And my dad and I were joking about that because he was like, that was the first time you actually said no. You just flat out bent, you were just like, I'm not doing this. And
Wow.
he knew in that instance, it was like, all right, you're going to define life by your terms and you're going to live how you want to live. And we can either get on board and be a part of your life or not. But every instance, we've chosen to be a part of each other's life because we love each other. And it's like, we are who we are, but we're also family and we're there for each other. And look, I'm going to drop this other bomb and you're going to have questions, but they rescued me when I was stranded in Paris and bought me a plane ticket home like on the 4th of July. So it's like, I know they got my back. And I remember my dad holding my hand and I told him like, this is after Paris. This is when I was getting a spinal tap and I hate needles. And I remember he was like, what do you need in this moment? And I was just like, just hold my hand and tell me, just talk to me, like distract me because like I hate needles. Like I was having a full on panic attack, but I knew that I couldn't move. And like keep like, so there's been instances like that where my parents have just been there for me. And what I also realized, what I needed from them wasn't to accept me because only I could give that me. What I needed from them was love. And by loving me, they accept me in all of that. It's a really weird thing, but it's just, yeah. And I also accept them. Like, look, they're very religious, they're Pentecostal, but somehow we all make it work.
Okay,
You know,
I said it was going to be
Here
emotional.
she goes. Here she goes. Ready.
I know, I can't help it. I'm the emotional one in the.
it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And to be fair, too, like my family has treated me in the way that I've grown up. Like, that's also what inspired me writing the Duchess and creating that character because I don't want to sound like I'm like so arrogant with it, but like I know that my story is not typical for a Black trans woman, like,
Right.
and especially what we see portrayed in the media, where it's so many trauma porn. Like it's just like, oh yes, you've suffered so much, you're suffering, and all the suffering. It's like I haven't done that much suffering, and I've got a
It's
lot of
always
love.
about the pain.
Right, and I've got a lot of love and support in my family, and I mean, there's been my own form of pain along that journey, but it hasn't been trauma to that degree. I know that my parents love me and will always have my back. I have got an incredibly supportive partner. I've got an incredibly, for lack of a better word, privileged life. And so that's really what inspired the Duchess of like, what does it mean to have privilege and what do you do with it, even as a Black trans woman? And it means to give back.
Can you talk a little bit about, or a lot about the Duchess of Grant Park? I love the Duchess, and I want the Duchess to be like my fairy god sister or fairy god cousin, because she's not old enough to be my favorite fairy godmother because I'm older than you, but I love
We don't know that. We don't know that.
Okay.
I put it out there that I'm 105. You just don't know how old I am. I am
Okay.
immortal. You're welcome.
Okay. All right. There you go. So yeah, so please tell us about the Duchess of Grant Park.
Like how she got started, what she does, who is she, all of
All
that.
the things, all the things.
All
I
of
am
the
so
things.
enamored with the Duchess, and I want other people to know about the Duchess and what the Duchess has meant to you, and how she came about. I mean, all of that. And for our listeners, there will be links to all the things so that you too can enjoy the Duchess.
I have had a long, long, lifelong love affair with European history and royalty. Like, I was born in Germany, and when I went to Paris for the first time, I was like, this feels like home. This is where I've meant to be all of my life, but I have to go back to the States. That's okay, whatever. In high school, like, I loved tiaras and everything like that. It was in the midst of therapy and figuring out my gender identity and all of that. And like, every winter I get seasonal depression or whatever, but for whatever reason, that season of my life, it was really hard. It was right around the time that The Greatest Showman came out, because I remember that song in there, like when
Oh
they
yeah, I
sing
love
"This
that
Is
song.
Me" and like Letty's dancing there, and she's like, you know, "This is me, I am brave," all of that, and like I'm sobbing in the theater, and like it's causing this complete emotional breakdown within of like trying to process, this is me, I am okay. And also like seeing Letty as a bearded woman, as someone who's considering transitioning, and it's like having to deal with facial hair and all that, like I just saw myself. And so I'm going to therapy and nothing's doing enough. So I'm like, whatever, I'm going to order me a tiara offline, and it's going to be the best thing ever. And it's going to be my self-care thing. So I ordered the tiara and then I put it on, and I was like, oh my God, this feels so amazing. This is what I needed all my life. The tiara for me became this self-care totem of, all right, it is really, really hard to feel bad about yourself, to be mean to yourself in the mirror when you're wearing a tiara. Like, you're just like, oh my God, look at me. I look amazing. I can't stop staring at myself. I need to stop. I'm gonna take it off. So fast forward, and the Duchess began as a micro short with Nicole and Sarah. They were going to fund a whole bunch of micro shorts, like 1 to 2 minute films.
Mhm.
And the Duchess began as a micro short, just the park scene where she's like, I'm starting a charity for the returned foreign unadopted children. And when all of that fell through, they couldn't produce the micro shorts anymore. The director, Brandon, and I got together and like, well, let's still do this. And I was like, yes, let's do this. But also, since that was intended to be a micro short, and I was okay with it in that format, but now that I'm getting further along in my transitioning, I don't want to make the Duchess a trans character, a stock character. I don't know how to better phrase this, but I didn't want to go the Medea Tyler Perry route of making someone the butt of the joke.
Mhm.
I wanted to give her depth and humanity, and also still keep that whimsy, but make her serious in a way. So the rewrites came, and we went from 2 pages to 5 pages to 7 pages, and it ended up at 19 pages. And I was like, okay, this is fun. How are we going to make this? I don't know. So that's kind of the genesis of the Duchess. At the beginning of 2019, January, Brandon and I were like, all right, we've wasted enough time. Let's do it. Like, we sat down and we're like, all right, this is what we need to do. We need to raise this money and get this going. And then sometime around May, right before I did leave to go on that New York trip, we were like, she needs to become a local minor celebrity, since that's what she claims to be in the film. And did she really need to become a local minor celebrity? Probably not. But did I enjoy the process? I sure did. So I started bringing the character to life. I started going out and dressing up as a Duchess. And Brandon told me a little bit while later, he saw like that was my way of easing into transitioning, of like tiptoeing and being like, is this something that I want to do, presenting like as a woman in real life? Like, it's one thing to do it around my house, but like, what about going in society and like being a person? And so I started doing that. I started going to plays dressed up as a Duchess. That's how I initially started. And then going to events. I realized too, by doing that, I have horrible social anxiety, like at events. Putting on the tiara, not only self-care, but it's like when you go out in public and you're wearing a tiara, apparently too, people can't help but stare at the tiara. So then it's like a way for me to control, all right, I'm trans in public, but if I wear a tiara, then I know exactly what they're staring at. And then we can guide the conversation from there. It just kind of became not only my self-care crutch in private, but also like in public, of like, all right, if you're having that teenage thing like everybody's looking at me, well, like give them a reason to look, put on a tiara, and then direct the conversation that way. I feel like that's really rambling way of kind of describing the Duchess, bring her into real life. And I got to walk in the Pride Parade in 2019 as a guest of my friend Oren, who appears in The Duchess with Baker Dude.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he invited the Duchess to walk along with his team, and it was an amazing everything. And the filming of The Duchess itself, it took part over 2 separate weekends in September. And they were just really magical days. It's an experience unlike anything else, especially the scene with the kids at the park. That was probably the most magical day ever. The wonderful thing about kids is like they see the magic. And so they saw the magic in that moment. I told all of them, all right, as the scene is over, because I went by one and I gave each one of them a tiara. So that scene where I'm crowning them in the movie is like an actual thing. Like I went around, I crowned each one and knighted them and made them princes and princesses of the Duchy of Grant Park. And I told them like afterwards, like those tiaras are yours, like to go on and keep. There's just so many amazing reactions from the kids of getting the tiara and like seeing each other and like being in the movie. It was incredible. Yeah, there's no words for it. I feel like that said a lot and covered a lot of ground, but I feel like now with the story of the Duchess, like it's entered into the next phase, the phase that I'm most excited about, where there's a scene in the park where the Duchess is speaking to Roberta and Beatrice. And, Beatrice and the Duchess is like, oh, we should find them and have tea and crumpets and all that other stuff. And Roberta's like, no tea, no crumpets. But I think I subconsciously knew at the time, maybe I didn't, but to me, that's come on to a new interpretation of wanting to go out there and wanting to meet other queer, trans, non-binary folk and crown them as well and say like, look, you choose your title, that's you, I give you this tiara and self-care and go out and crown somebody else. Like just passing along that message of don't forget to take care of yourself. When you look in the mirror, you are amazing, you're beautiful, you're worth it, and all of that. That's the part in the life of the Duchess that I'm most excited about, is building out and meeting other queer, trans, non-binary people and hearing their stories and forming this network of just dukes and duchesses and everyone else who just want to be connected and be amazing.
So I watched it this morning while I was prepping and I cried. I seriously did. It pulled at something in my heart. I know what it pulled at. It pulled at, I've been working with my therapist on my little inner Jenny, and my little inner Jenny felt it. Self-love, man, that's the way to go.
It is, and it's so powerful, and I'm so glad you took that away from the film, because like that is the core mission of the Duchess, is to spread self-love and self-care. Yeah,
it was really good. If our listeners want to watch it, you set up a code for them, correct?
you sure did. Yes,
code is
Madness 22, I believe.
Yep, Madness 22.
Yes, and that'll take 50% off of the film.
And we'll put all of this in the show notes as well. One thing that really stood out for me is in your Instagram, your hashtag crown yourself. Is that from the Duchess and the tiaras?
It sure is. Yes, it is. It's kind of the promo thing I use for the Duchess, like when we were promoting it leading up to it and crowdfunding and everything, is like hashtag crown yourself. You don't need permission from anyone else to make you amazing. Like it's there within you. And so a bit of the Duchess also comes from James Baldwin. And he has this quote, your crown is already bought and paid for. All you have to do is wear it. So that's part of why the Duchess goes around crowning people. Is like, it's been bought and paid for, but also you don't need me or anyone else. I respect everyone's lifestyle choices of like being pro or anti-tiara or whatever. But, once you put it on, it makes you feel something. It does. Like, and the best thing to do if you're over the age of 21 is to put it on, go soak in a tub, bring yourself a glass of Prosecco, maybe some jelly beans, I don't know, light a candle or your bubble bath. And it's amazing. The ultimate self-care thing for me is to do that.
That is what I'm going to do the next time I'm feeling sorry for myself.
Yes, please do.
Put down on and get in the bathtub.
Awesome.
Light you some candles, play some amazing music, and just remember, like, yeah, I'm amazing. Like, I can, this, and it's not to minimize or whatever anyone's going through. It's just like, for this instant, in this moment, in this space, I'm going to feel good about myself. And it may stop when I finish, but at least this island of me loving myself.
I think what it really speaks to too is something that Raquel and I have both been working on quite a bit with our therapists, and that's that that need for validation from the outside, we don't need, it's nice, but we don't need that. It has to be what we see in ourselves, and learning that all of us, the whole entire human race, has value just because we're born, not because we produce something, not because we, whatever, just because we do. We're born, we're humans, we deserve it.
Yes, all of that. Yes, I'm sure working through your therapist on the self-love, like self-acceptance, self-validation journey. It's incredibly rough. There are days where you just want to scream at your therapist and be like, look, that was so rude of you. Why on earth? I know that I'm coming to you asking you to help me solve this problem, but I did not actually mean for you to solve it. Like, I thought we were just gonna like play patty cake, and you are making me cry. Why? And I have to go home and live with these emotions. How dare you?
100%. That is actually it.
And I have done that. I have yelled at my therapist many times. God bless that woman.
I told my best friend the other day, she was like, you have a great therapist. I'm like, I don't like her very much.
Like, they are rude. They ask a lot of questions. They won't take no for an answer. And then it got to the point with my therapist where it was like, I would try to BS him and he would just give me a look. And then it would just be this battle of like, okay, fine. You know what? I'm just going to therapize myself here. Like, you give me a look. And clearly I know what I said did not ring true. So it was like, I'm going to do your job for you. And then he'll give me like the affirmation, like, you did it. And I was like, I'm so mad at you. How dare you?
I don't like you at all.
Right. I'm never coming back, but I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Exactly.
It's so true.
Oh, but it's a lot of work, and it's one of the hardest things going through therapy of trying, I call it almost an addiction, of trying to release myself from this addiction of external validation.
Mm.
And or at least to minimize it, because I feel like to some degree, like external validation is healthy, but releasing yourself from this deep-seated desire of never feeling satisfied, of seeking external validation, like that was really important for not only my journey as a human, but also my journey as a trans woman, because like transitioning is incredibly tough, and it is tough mentally, emotionally, anything you could think of. And if I had not worked with my therapist to lay down that foundation of starting to find validation with myself, I feel like it would have been a much tougher road. And that's what worked for me. And I can't say it works for everyone else, but I think doing the emotional work is incredibly helpful. It is tough out there for queer, trans, non-binary people. There are a lot of days where it's just like, you're going to have to look in the mirror and tell yourself that you're beautiful, because some days there's not going to be somebody else.
Well, and I think you bring up a really important point, that yes, you did the work, you built the foundation, but you continue to go back to it, and you continue to pour into your own cup, and you continue to build and nurture that love for yourself.
Oh, yes. And it also, this caveat with that as well, is that I'm also an actor and a fool stuck in the entertainment industry. So I need also a lot of self-care and self-validation from that end as well, because like it's tough getting rejected from auditions and things like that, where it's like, all right, my worth is not determined by what I'm booking or not booking. Like, doing that foundation with the therapist, it applies in so many different ways. It's learning new skills, and you take those skills with you to apply them to new and different situations that you'll continue to fall back on. And the more you do it with acting or any other skill, the better you get at it. And the easier it is to rely on the skills. Is the work get any easier? No, it actually gets tougher. And
You're not supposed to say that. It's supposed to be
right. I'm not gonna lie to you. I was just crying last night and this morning. Like, it's an ongoing thing. But at least I know, like, it's okay to cry, and it's okay to have these emotions right now. Like, let myself feel, let this emotion out. It's okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sitting with those emotions and being with them and being okay in the emotion.
That is so hard. Did any of y'all watch Charmed?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this scene, but whenever I think of sitting with my emotions, I think of the scene where Time or someone takes Phoebe back, and she has to watch her mom die. And his sisters are like, why didn't you do anything? And she's having to explain to them that like this was her healing, like this was her having to get through that. And that's what I think of every time sitting in my emotions. I need to sit there or stand there like Phoebe and watch this and allow myself to feel it, like not try and do anything, literally just sit there and let my feelings be.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
totally can see that. And that is such a tough space to be in. But my therapist tells me that it will get easier. You're telling me it doesn't.
Your therapist lied.
She said, as you grow these skills, it won't feel so foreign. It will get easier to do. You will be okay with it.
I think you get stronger.
What she said is, yes, it's true. It will get easier to do, and you will build up that skill. Now it's like burning your hand, like that never gets easier. It's a skill you develop.
You're really hurting me today.
I'm sorry. Because as you learn to sit in your emotions, like you're actually allowing yourself to feel the pains and or whatever emotions you're feeling. So like they come on like 100%, and you need to do that. So it's not that it gets harder, it's just that you're feeling the full force of them and you have the skills to do it and sit with them, if that makes any sense.
Totally.
Yes. Yes. So do you think being able to sit with them, to sit with all the emotions and developing that ability, do you think that that has allowed you to put the Duchess out there and to put the Waltz out there?
I think so. Filmmaking, it's an incredibly brutal process. And the reason I was crying this morning and last night and every single day since I decided to undertake the Waltz is because making a feature film is incredibly tough. Like, yeah, I was just thinking about this yesterday, but it's like everyone's always like, what's the worst that people can say? No. And it's like, well, yes, I mean, technically that is true. That's the worst they could say. But when you hear that 50 to 60 times a week, like it does something to your psyche. You're just like, and so coming in with that, all right, I'm worth it. I'm putting on my tiara, like I've got validation. Just because I'm failing in this moment doesn't mean that I'm a failure for life. Like it's a lot of self-talk, and I think it's made me a better actor, a better writer. Like the skills we just talked about and what I just talked about, the emotions that go into hearing no so many times, like sitting in that and knowing like, all right, it may feel like no for right now, and take a break, like take a break from hearing no's. And then when you're ready, when you have the strength, resume it. Acting and therapy go hand in hand so well. Like, here's what I recommend. I recommend taking your therapy, but then find an acting class. And I'm serious, like it becomes a practicum for like applying the skills in the safe space of what you've learned in therapy, of sitting with your emotions in imaginary circumstances.
That
Living,
literally is the scariest thing you could have said to me is, Raquel, go take an acting class. Like
right.
that's the scariest thing to me.
Absolutely terrifying. And that's how it was when I started it back in my journey of taking acting classes and then doing therapy along the way and getting so frustrated at my therapist. Like, how dare you bring up these emotions? But then going to acting classes and being given a scene and then having to sit and those emotions as a character is like, oh, wow, this is how you do it. Like those emotions weren't real for me in this situation, but I apply that in a different situation. Learning to put into practice what your therapist says. And building upon that as an actor, like I think that allowed me in making the Duchess to sit with those uncomfortabilities. Like in that last scene, when I'm talking about, do I think Andrew is proud of me? Like, I'll be honest, my brother had died earlier that year in 2019, and I'm sitting in that moment, and the grief pops up for me of wondering, like, is my brother proud of me? And I still carry that with me of wondering, is he proud of me? And it's also weird too, because part of the Duchess's story about Andrew, it came out of a thought experiment of what would my life be like? What would I do if and when Eddie dies? We have a 30-year age difference in our relationship. Making the Duchess was sitting in that emotion of like, all right, if I have a life after Eddie, what is it going to look like? And sitting in that feeling. And then in that final moment of that movie of like sitting in that grief that even though he had died 6 months earlier, it was still there, and just wondering like, is my brother proud of me? So
that I could feel.
yeah,
I could feel, that's where I cried, was right at that moment. I could feel that.
Mhm.
That's what I was thinking about in that moment, and forcing myself to sit in that moment of like, oh wow, this is intense. I constantly wonder, is my brother proud of me? Because we had such a complex and rough relationship that we didn't get the neat closure that
Mhm.
would have been nice. And
Mhm.
so I still carry that with me. So yeah, and even more recent, we celebrated my late brother's birthday this past February 28th. I had not watched his memorial video that I made since his funeral. And then, of course, right at dinner at the Atlanta Fish Market restaurant, sitting there, we placed our order for our food. My dad pulls out the laptop. I was like, hey, let's watch the video. I was like, oh my God, 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 oh my God. And then he starts playing it, and I'm trying to hold it together, but it's just like being back at his funeral and seeing that video of all of that grief coming back to me. But
Mhm.
again, therapy, this is how it all circles back of like, even at his funeral and even in that moment of rewatching that video, it's like, don't run from this pain, sit in it. Your body needs to experience. And my mom crossed the table and sat on my side and just held me. And I made it through the video crying and just absolutely bawling. It was sitting in that grief. And then telling myself, this is going to take a couple of days of process. Like, you're taking tomorrow off and you're going to sit for the next few days in these feelings and process the feelings as they come.
God, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's
And
really beautiful.
it's really tough to do, but like I came home from that dinner, I dropped off my nephew and I came home and I just crawled on bed with Eddie and I just sobbed in him, telling him everything that happened. It's such an important part of my journey. And I think for everyone's journey of learning to face those tough emotions and not trying to bury them. Because as I've learned in the past, burying them leads to problems. And the next thing you know, you're stranded in Paris and calling your parents, hey, rescue me. So, and it
Right.
gets really expensive. So yeah.
Well, I think, like Jennifer said, that was absolutely beautiful, and I think it's a testament to the strength that you have and the strength that you have cultivated within yourself.
So one thing I'm really curious about, to completely change the subject on you both, there's a lot of weird shit going on right now in Florida in regards to trans youth. How do you feel about that? And as a trans person, what do you think we all should be doing?
Number one, I'm glad you said shit because now I know that I can curse.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
So words don't express how mad, how angry. I just feel this rage inside of me, and I want to go down there as a duchess or whomever and just literally knock some sense into people.
Mhm.
It infuriates me, and I hate feeling powerless. There's nothing that I can do to change those laws except continuing what I'm trying to do now and build up support so that I can affect change. I think that's the most we can do. We can empower them with love and support and let them know, like, hey, this is really shitty for now. And how can I best support you during this time? For some families who have the means, that may mean moving, but there's also a lot of youth who don't have that option. And I think it does take that reaching out. You know what? Fuck the law. Like,
Mm.
civil disobedience, like fuck the law,
Right.
protect the youth. Like
Amen.
the need for protecting our all of our youth is much greater than some adult legislator projecting their own phobias and fears on a population. And I think that's also what it's coming down to, is this fear or this need to control. Like, I don't know, but advocate on their behalf, like
Mhm.
support them and then advocate on their behalf.
Mhm.
They may feel like they cannot speak up because they are trapped or whatever. Treat it like a hostage situation, I tell them. Humanize yourself and make yourself known, and yeah, humanize yourself. That's the tactic that I apply to everyday situations. Like as a Black trans woman, is like, if I can humanize myself with people, then it'll make it more real. But I think as adults, you have the stakes are different for you as an adult versus a child. And I
Mhm.
think you can advocate smartly and successfully where it's not berating another person in an argument, but trying to connect with their humanity.
Mhm.
And again, going back to that hostage analogy, it's like that's the first advice they give to people who are taken hostage. Not that I ever was, but I don't know why I know this training. But yeah, just humanize yourself, talk about your family and things like that, because I think once we see the connection we have with others, it's much harder to inflict pain if we know how it affects, how that emotion impacts someone, if there's that empathy and sympathy. So I think those are really the two biggest things. Yeah.
I have another question in regards to that. I work where we have pretty open trans community. A lot of our workers are trans and transitioning. And as their manager and leader, sometimes feel conflicted. Not conflicted is not the right word. I want to know how to best support them as a manager as they're going through the transition, because a lot of things change, like pronouns change, voices change, appearance changes. And how do we support that as it's happening?
So it's like a difficult, tricky topic, because I know it works for me, but also I've been very cautious about speaking what may work for somebody else in their community. I think coming up with a way to create that dialogue, to create that conversation that still feels safe. And I don't know what that looks like, but that's asking as a community, how do we want to deal with this? How would you like us to address change? Do you want us to approach it? Do you not want us to approach it? And really starting that dialogue, probably at first in an anonymous way, so that people feel safe to respond, and then taking it from there. Some people may really want a sense of normalcy. And so for them, it may mean not addressing it at all. For others, they may want to talk about it. I think it really is an individual approach. And I think the best thing you can do is to be very open and honest and let others know that you are a safe person to talk to. And if they want to discuss it, you're happy to discuss it. And if they don't want to acknowledge it at all, then that works for you too. But kind of taking that approach is that it's not a one size fits all. It's a dialogue. And even I'm still working on it with others, and the approach that I've been taking, not necessarily in that way, but when it comes to pronouns, of like just starting the conversation a couple of sentences in, so it's not so awkward, but it's just like, and just remind me, what are your pronouns again? Like, just to kind of reaffirm, like, even if it's cis people, like people who are born male or female and have no signs of transitioning, just opening that dialogue of like, and I'm so sorry, remind me, what are your pronouns again? And that helps to normalize it. If someone is listening on, that's also a nice way of letting them know, like, you're a safe person, especially if you're doing it to people who appear very cisgender. It's like, well, you should know my pronouns. And it's like, let's not assume anything. Maybe you're presenting female or male, but you're actually non-binary, or you're considering transitioning. I think it's really helpful to ask, like, what are your pronouns? That's a really great way to start the dialogue. And some people may be taken aback and it's like, oh, clearly male or clearly female, but it's giving that respect. And also there are some people who are questioning and may say, like, for now it's she and her, but I'm questioning and it may change. And that lets you know, like, all right, they're in that stage. Like, so yeah, I feel like putting in a what are your pronouns, whether it's the beginning of a conversation, a couple sentences in, or towards the end, is just a way to let people know I'm being aware and I'm being conscious, and a place to start that dialogue. I feel like I said two conflicting things in those statements, but we'll go there.
No, I don't think you did at all. I think you answered that really well.
Oh, thank you.
Jennifer, you brought up the point of having those conversations in the workplace, so talking to adults, but
sort of adults, young,
sort of
very young adults,
adult-ish,
young adults, 20-ish adults.
Okay.
They're probably a lot more open to the pronoun discussion. Like, it's very much more open than older people.
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah, that's what I was actually getting to, is that, have those conversations with younger people too. I mean, with kids. I have friends who have teenagers, and I hear their teenagers talking with their friends. They're really open about it. They're, oh, well, my pronouns are blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. Friends who have even younger children who of the same sex. And it's just something you say, it's not, oh my God, what did my kid say? It's, my kid feels comfortable saying these things. So I think what you're saying, Ava, of have the conversations, because you don't know who's listening, that might, land for somebody who's not even directly part of that conversation.
I call it passive activism. It's like, oftentimes we think of active activism as like being able to march in the streets and go down and protest, but it's like, that probably forms 10% of the work. The 90%, when you look at social movements, whether it's civil rights or the gay rights, it's really these conversations that help change viewpoints, and the whole idea you don't know who's listening in, and
Mhm.
that sort of activism of just saying like through your words and actions, like I'm respecting everyone.
Yeah, I think it's going back to what you were saying before of humanizing.
Yeah.
People who are othered are quite often not seen as human.
Yes.
And to humanize someone who is in that situation goes a long way, I think.
I know that even going to college, when I still presented as a male, it was changing the minds of a lot of my roommates and people on my floor of really having those one-on-one conversations, not even one-on-one conversations, but just like, oh my God, this person is a person. They have feelings. Maybe I shouldn't vote against their interests. I don't know if that really
Exactly.
worked, but it's like I humanized myself. It was a hostage situation still. But
Yeah,
yeah,
well, you put that thought into someone's head, a thought that maybe they wouldn't have had before, and who knows where that thought would lead.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
hope.
Well, yeah, hopefully, sure, yeah.
And that's all you can do is like you can't go in there saying like, I'm going to change your mind. Could somebody change your mind? But it's like,
Mhm.
can you lay out things? And I hope that you see it that way, but I can't force you to see it that way. Like, that's just how I view it. And I view it that way because like, I am a person, I'm a human.
I love the way you just put that. You can't force them. You can
No.
just present it to them.
And I think too, presenting it to them, like that's also a respect thing. Like forcing someone to do something isn't respectful. But if you lay out the options, like this is your choice, I can't force you to do anything. I hope that you make a decent and human decision, but I'm not forcing you to do anything because I can't. Just like you
Mhm.
couldn't force me to do anything, and my dad could not force me to go to Mercer. Like it's like I'm putting my foot down, I'm getting obstinate. Like you have not seen the side of me, but let's go.
To maybe tie it back into your your film work, I think it ties in maybe to the waltz as well. In I think you termed it the unlikely friendship that develops between two people in this dance class.
Yeah, I that's exactly it. Where and I don't know if you've seen any of the stage readings or recordings or anything like that.
I have.
Okay, okay. But and I think I may have sent you a clip of the scene where the two meet in the dance class for the first time.
Mhm.
But even that scene where it's just like initially Dave is just really turned off by the idea of dancing with a trans person.
Mhm.
And I think that reflects a larger societal thing. Like, yes, things are shifting, but also this whole thing of like, I've never met a trans person before. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, in a sense, I'm afraid of how to respond, how to be respectful, hopefully. Who is this person? What are they going to do? And I think that fear for Dave in that scene where they first meet does come out. But ultimately, he does a human thing like, oh no, I've offended, I've hurt this person. Let me go and try and make it right somehow. The two work through that in the film. And I think it does connect to my work and this idea of like humanizing. Like, if I can humanize me and in theory other trans people, then hopefully it works for my larger mission of making the Southeast specifically a safer place for queer, trans, and non-binary youth.
So, what response have you gotten from the trans community and the LGBTQ community about your work?
It's been really inspiring. And with the Duchess, I did not expect, number one, I wasn't necessarily expecting people to cry. I was hoping they would maybe laugh at moments, but it's like, you're crying, please stop. But don't, but please, but thank you. Like, as a storyteller, it makes me feel as though I'm telling the story effectively and hopefully getting across the point that I want to get across is the humanity in all of us. But also, even in the Waltz and the Kickstarter campaigns, I was really blown away by number one, the response to the reading of people responding to the in-person reading we did of like this story, it's universal and yet it's so specific of on TikTok where people TikTok is where like a lot of people shared a lot of my promotional videos of like support this campaign, and they were sharing at like a 10 to 20% rate over views, where it's like that's insane to me. Like this little story. And in the videos where I am explaining the story, queer, trans, and non-binary community that I've interacted want to see more stories, not dealing with trauma, but dealing with joy of just existing and being. Even in the Sundance program that I was a part of, the program manager who brought me in, she told me, I wanted you a part of this program because this story is just about joy, about someone living their life who happens to be trans and going through this experience that we can all relate to. Dating is tough, and it's dating under these circumstances, but it's just like, it's still very universal experience. And my mentor made me cry, as did other people in other mentors in the program, of saying similar things, of having read my script. And it's just like, wow, thank you for that response, because we need more stories about trans joy. To segue just a little, or tangent a little bit, I've not watched Pose. I cannot get through the first episode where the guy is in the dance class and he's dancing with all of his soul to I Want to Dance with Somebody by Whitney Houston. And I'm just feeling like that scene makes me bawl every time I watch it, because you can just see that character pouring themselves into that. And then that hug with the teacher at the end of that scene, it's just like, I felt that. So I felt that moment, but then the rest of the series, there's so much trauma going on. It's like, I can't watch trans trauma. Like I can't, especially at the initial stages of my transitioning. I think too, that leads me to the work that I want to make, is like, for someone who's just on their discovery in gender or sexuality, there needs to be more stories out there besides just like, yeah, you're gonna die, so sorry, it's gonna be really rough and it's gonna be really traumatic. It's like, yeah, but what if you live? You may live. That could be really exciting, that could be really powerful, and you could do amazing things.
What if you live?
And that comes from that quote of, I think, what if I fail, or what if I fall? And it's like, but what if you fly?
Woo, that's good stuff.
Thank you.
Ava, I think you are definitely flying for sure. And to see you do that is amazing. So thank you for letting us be a part of it.
Thank you for being a part of it. And thank you for saying that, because there's a lot of days, like I said, where it does not feel like I'm flying. So sometimes to get that outside perspective is like, maybe I am. All right. The push I needed to keep going.
Was there anything that you specifically wanted to talk about?
I feel like we covered crowning yourself, don't forget to fly, you may live, support LGBTQ youth. Those are my big things. And jellybeans, and how we do in jellybeans. So yeah.
Oh, well, Ava, thank you so much for not only being on the show, but sharing your talent and your vision and your story and your experience with all of us. Like you said, we're humans. This humanizes us. One question that I have, because I saw that a recent Instagram post that the Kickstarter is fully funded. For people who are listening to this after it's been funded, can they still contribute?
So the first thing that Hillary and I need to do is we need to meet with the entertainment lawyer, and then we need to form the LLC, because that way all the money is raised from that definitely go into the film itself. All that money is specifically earmarked for the Waltz. We can then apply for fiscal sponsorship, and a fiscal sponsor allows us to take in tax deductible donations and crowdfund in that way, where it's specifically for our project. And then we will have all that information on the website of like, all right, you can donate to the campaign this way. And if you want it tax deductible, it can be a tax deductible donation, because yeah, there will be some fees coming up. But the biggest thing is, as an independent filmmaker, is audience building. That was another reason that I ran the Kickstarter campaign, is to spread the word and let people know about the film, because as a first-time filmmaker making a feature film, both for myself and Hilary R. Heath, the director, we basically have to prove ourselves. The monies that we need to raise from investors for the total film, $750,000 to $1.5 million, is astronomical.
Oh.
Right. I paid somebody, again, like a therapist, to give me that number. And then I cried for like 2 weeks of like, how am I supposed to raise that much money?
No idea.
So yeah, even the back of the napkin numbers that I had written, just like completely doing it ourselves, was still like, I think 200,000 just for production costs alone. That's not pre-production and that's not editing. That's literally just the number of days it would take to film it and make sure that everyone was paid, because we'd have to pay. I mean, of course we have to pay everyone, but it's like people are taking off work and things like that.
Mhm.
So the monies that we raise that are tax deductible, they help go towards offsetting pre-production costs until we can get investors. And
Mhm.
specifically, Hillary, myself, and I, the Waltz, have been invited to apply for Sundance's film financing forum, which is huge.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a really huge invitation. We are invited to apply for the pre-application so they can decide if we can actually apply. It boggles the mind, but in order to do the pre-application, we need to find a film producer who understands film financing deals and also has produced one feature film. And so that is why I'm crying at night, because it's still reaching out to do that. But once we have that in place, if we apply with that producer and we get into the program, then we get to go in front of 65 different film investors who are willing to invest in first-time filmmakers and form ongoing relationships with them. And until we get investors on board, a lot of the costs are coming out of pocket. And so that's incredibly tough. $3,500 for the entertainment lawyer and the LLC and the dance lessons. Those were the most pressing things that we could foresee that would help us further this film. And it's like, if we have an LLC, then we can also bring on investors at that point legally. We don't know what we're doing with investors, so we need someone to help guide us. So there's a lot of things behind the scenes. Yeah.
A lot of moving parts.
So many. That's why I cry every morning. I just have my daily cry about like, how is this film going to get made? And then I wipe those tears away and it's like, all right, girl, let's get to work. Let's do some stuff through the tears.
Woo. Well, anybody listening, if you have any connections to anybody in the movie biz, please, please help Ava get this movie made. This
Thank
movie
you.
needs to be out there. So
Thank you.
putting out that call to action.
I'm
Yeah.
daring to hope. It's a very dangerous thing for me to hope because I'm so crushed when it doesn't happen, but
It's in the vision.
okay.
It's in the vision. We're hoping for you, and it's out there. We're putting it out there. It's going to happen. It's
Duchess, as we say goodbye, will you put your crown on and give us I don't even know how you do that thing.
the wave.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
Oh,
And-
well done.
all in the elbow wrist action.
Thank you, Duchess.
You're welcome. But also, here's another tidbit for everyone who's listening. Technically, tiaras should not be worn before 6 p.m.
I did not know that.
Like, I'm a rule breaker. Like, I don't follow the continental or the British system. We're American. I'm an American Duchess, so I'm gonna do it my way. That means wearing it before 6 p.m. But the Queen set forth a rule protocol: no diamonds or sparkly bits before 6 p.m.
No sparkly bits.
No, look, you wear all your sparkly bits all day long.
I will. I do.
Good. Everybody should sparkle 24/7.
Thank you. My motto too.
It's a great way to end it. Thank you, Ava. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Raquel. Thank you, Jennifer, for having me on. This has been amazing.
Bye, Ava. It was so good to meet you.
Bye.
Bye, Ava. Oh, God, that was so good.
Oh boy, do I feel like crowning myself right now.
Yes.
I just felt like from Ava exudes personal power, like this personal power
Yes.
of knowing who she is. Maybe it doesn't always feel that way to her, but who she is, where she's going, what she's about.
Yes. And
And-
standing in it and projecting it and empowering
giving it
other
to
people to do
others.
the same.
We just said the same thing at the same time and giving it to others.
Mhm.
What a beautiful woman.
So beautiful. I mean, inside and out. And I'm just moved.
Thanks for letting me meet your friend.
Oh, you are very welcome. And you were, I think, just being open and loving and advocating and standing up for people, you're part of it.
Yeah,
So
fucking ass, those fucking Florida laws. I just, ugh,
fucking Florida.
it's hurting my friends and my people.
Right. And it's just so wrong. But we're speaking up and we vote and we
don't vote in Florida though.
Well, we don't vote in Florida, but every other state is susceptible to this kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
And we vote in our own states, or we should. And we can support trans youth and trans adults and LGBTQ youth and adults in our own communities. And, you know, I say this all the time, but that you throw that pebble into the lake and it ripples out, and you start in your community and it ripples out. Do what you can, but support people. We are all humans. We are all deserving of love and rights and support and strength and safety.
Bye, Raquel.
Bye, sweetie. Thanks everyone for listening today. We will be back with more Madness Cafe next week. You can find us on Instagram at Madness Cafe Podcast or email us at madnesscafepodcast@gmail.com. Bye.